London, 1845. Olivia Gardiner scrubbed the stone floor of Brentworth Manor's kitchen until her knuckles bled, a small price to pay for her daily bread. The morning sun had barely crept through the narrow windows when Mrs. Winters, the housekeeper, appeared with her perpetual scowl. "Girl, you've missed a spot." "Again?" The housekeeper's sharp voice cut through the kitchen's humid air. "How you expect to keep your position with such carelessness is beyond comprehension." "Yes, Mrs. Winters," Olivia murmured, pushing a rebellious auburn curl back beneath her cap. At 22, she had learned that invisibility was her greatest protection. 7 years of service had taught her that a maid with opinions was a maid without employment. The other servants whispered that Olivia was peculiar, too educated for a scullery maid, too proud despite her lowly station. They didn't know she had once been the daughter of a respected physician, that she had studied Latin and literature before her father's disgrace and suicide. Before debt collectors had stripped their modest home bare, leaving her mother to die of consumption and Olivia to fend for herself. Love and security are luxuries for those born to privilege, she reminded herself as she dipped her raw hands back into the bucket. Service is the only path available to ruin daughters. Her reverie was interrupted by thundering footsteps and frantic voices. The butler burst into the kitchen, his usual composure shattered. "His Grace has collapsed in the library. Someone fetch Dr. Morris immediately." The house erupted into chaos. Olivia remained frozen, watching the commotion unfold. His Grace, the young Duke of Brentworth, had only returned from his grand tour 2 days prior. She had glimpsed him just once, tall, commanding, with piercing eyes that seemed to hold secrets within their depths. "The doctor won't arrive for hours," Mrs. Winters wailed. "He's attending Lady Pembroke's confinement in the next county." Olivia's hands trembled. Her father's voice echoed in her memory, "Knowledge unused is a sin against God, Olivia. Medicine is meant to heal, regardless of who needs the healing." Before she could reconsider, she was on her feet. "I might be able to help," she said, her voice stronger than it had been in years. Mrs. Winters turned on her with fury. "Back to your duties, girl. How dare you presume? My father was Dr. Thomas Gardiner of Edinburgh," Olivia interrupted, summoning courage she'd buried long ago. "I assisted him for many years. If his Grace has been poisoned or suffered an apoplexy, minutes may determine whether he lives or dies." The butler exchanged a glance with Mrs. Winters. "The Duke's valet mentioned symptoms like those of poison," he said hesitantly. "Bring her," came the desperate command from the doorway, where the valet stood ashen-faced. "His Grace is turning blue." Olivia rushed through the grand corridors she normally only traversed before dawn to light fires. The opulence of Brentworth Manor, with its gilded ceilings and priceless paintings, had never felt more inconsequential as she entered the library. There on the Persian carpet lay Edward Brentworth, the 7th Duke of Brentworth, his handsome face contorted in agony, a half-empty teacup overturned beside him. Olivia knelt beside him, propriety forgotten. She tilted his head back to ease his breathing, then examined his pupils and the bluish tint around his lips. "Aconite poisoning," she declared, recognizing the symptoms from her father's toxicology texts. "I need activated charcoal, strong coffee, and brandy immediately." For the next 3 hours, Olivia worked tirelessly, forcing the remedies down the Duke's throat, monitoring his pulse, and applying cold compresses to his forehead. When his body convulsed, she held him steady, whispering reassurances she wasn't certain he could hear. When Dr. Morris finally arrived, he was astonished to find the Duke conscious, if weak. After examining his Grace and listening to Olivia's methodical explanation of the treatment she'd administered, the physician nodded with grudging respect. "You've saved his life, girl. No question about it. Aconite poisoning, indeed. I couldn't have done better myself." The Duke's eyes fluttered open, focusing momentarily on Olivia's face with an intensity that made her cheeks burn. She quickly looked away, suddenly aware of her inappropriate proximity to England's most eligible bachelor, of her filthy apron and calloused hands. "Thank you," he whispered hoarsely before drifting back to sleep. "Who would want to poison his grace?" the butler whispered. "That's for the authorities to determine," Dr. Morris replied grimly. "Meanwhile, this girl should be rewarded." Mrs. Winters stepped forward. "Olivia was simply performing her Christian duty, Doctor. Now, girl, back to the kitchens. You've disturbed his grace enough." Olivia rose on shaky legs, backing away from the prone figure. In saving his life, she had revealed her true background, something she had concealed for years to avoid uncomfortable questions. Worse, she had touched a duke, spoken to him as though she had the right. By evening, Mrs. Winters had made her position clear. Olivia's actions, while perhaps commendable, had disrupted the natural order. Her presumption in touching his grace required disciplinary action. She would receive half wages for a month and additional scullery duties. That night, alone in her attic chamber, Olivia wept silently. Not for the punishment, but for the brief moment when she had been herself again, Olivia the physician's daughter, not Olivia the invisible maid. For a fleeting instant, she had remembered what it felt like to have purpose, to be valued for her mind rather than her ability to scrub floors. Such dangerous thoughts, she chided herself. A ruined woman must accept her place. 2 days later, while the Duke recovered under Dr. Morris's care, Olivia was summoned to the housekeeper's office. Her heart pounded, certain she was about to be dismissed now that Mrs. Winters had found a suitable replacement. Instead, she found a small leather pouch containing 10 guineas, more money than she earned in half a year. "His Grace insisted," Mrs. Winters said stiffly. "Though I advised against such excessive generosity for simply doing what any Christian soul would do." Olivia stared at the coins. "Please return it to His Grace with my gratitude. I cannot accept payment for a human duty." Mrs. Winters's eyebrows rose in genuine surprise. "Don't be foolish, girl. Take the money and be thankful His Grace doesn't remember which servant girl attended him. Better for everyone that way." That night, Olivia wrapped the money in a handkerchief and hid it beneath a loose floorboard in her room. Pride wouldn't feed her if she lost her position, and the sum represented a glimmer of hope for a different future, perhaps a small room of her own someday, away from service. As summer faded into autumn, the attempted poisoning of the Duke of Brentworth became the scandal of London society. Rumour circulated that a jilted Italian contessa had attempted revenge after His Grace ended their liaison in Florence. Others whispered that business rivals had sought to eliminate him before he could modernize his family's holdings. The true culprit was never publicly identified, though constables questioned the staff repeatedly. Olivia kept her head down, grateful that in the chaos of that day, few had registered her face or name. The Duke recovered fully and departed for London when Parliament convened, leaving the household to return to its usual rhythms. By December, frost etched patterns on the windows of Brentworth Manor, and Olivia had almost convinced herself that the incident was behind her. Until the day a letter arrived from London, bearing the Brentworth seal and addressed to the female domestic who rendered medical assistance to His Grace on June 12. Mrs. Winters summoned Olivia to her office, her expression thunderous. "His Grace has requested your presence in London," she said, each word dripping with displeasure. "Apparently, Dr. Morris mentioned your medical knowledge to him, and he wishes to speak with you regarding a position in his London household." Olivia's world tilted. "But you will refuse, of course," Mrs. Winters interrupted. "A respectable girl doesn't abandon her position midwinter, nor does she place herself in the household of a bachelor known for his continental attitudes." The implication was clear and cutting. The Duke of Brentworth, like many aristocratic men, had a reputation for dalliances with female servants. "I have no intention of accepting," Olivia assured her, though her heart raced traitorously. A position in London might offer higher wages, access to bookshops, perhaps even connections to medical practitioners who had known her father. Mrs. Winters sniffed. "See that you don't. I've taken the liberty of drafting a response declining His Grace's offer, citing your devoted service to Brentworth Manor and your modest desire to remain out of the public eye." That night, as wind howled around the eaves of her tiny room, Olivia withdrew the 10 guineas from their hiding place. Freedom and opportunity beckoned from London, yet she knew the risks for a woman alone were substantial. Was the promise of advancement worth the danger of placing herself directly under the Duke's attention? "You've survived by being invisible," she reminded herself. "Ambition destroyed your father. Remember your place." Yet when she finally slept, she dreamed of London streets, of medical texts, and of intense eyes that had briefly looked into hers with gratitude. Edward Brentworth, 7th Duke of Brentworth, frowned at the letter in his hand. The response from his country estate vexed him, formal, proper, and clearly not written by the woman he sought. "Richardson," he called to his secretary, "this reply regarding the maid with medical knowledge, did you verify it came from her directly?" Richardson cleared his throat uncomfortably. "My inquiries suggest Mrs. Winters, your housekeeper, may have interpreted your Grace's request according to her own judgment." Edward's frown deepened. 6 months had passed since his near-death experience, yet he remained haunted by fragmented memories, gentle hands, a melodic voice offering reassurance, and most vividly, amber eyes filled with intelligence and compassion. Dr. Morris had been forthcoming about the servant girl's background, daughter of a respected Edinburgh physician, reduced to service through family tragedy. The doctor had been impressed by her quick diagnosis and treatment, insisting the Duke would have died without her intervention. Edward ran a hand through his dark hair, recalling his frustration upon awakening days after the poisoning to discover his saviour had been dismissed back to the kitchens without proper recognition. By the time he regained enough strength to inquire about her, the household had closed ranks, minimizing her role to that of a mere assistant to the doctor. "This won't do," he murmured. His life had been irrevocably changed by his brush with death. The frivolous pursuits that had occupied him before, gambling, racing, dalliances with widows and opera dancers, now seemed hollow. He had returned from the brink with a determination to bring purpose to his privileged existence. And finding the woman who had saved him had become inexplicably important to that purpose. "Your Grace," Richardson ventured, "perhaps a more direct approach? You're expected at Brentworth Manor for the Christmas season in any case." Edward nodded slowly. "Indeed. We shall depart tomorrow." 3 days later, Brentworth Manor was in chaos preparing for its master's unexpected early arrival. Olivia worked feverishly alongside the other maids, polishing silver and crystal until her fingers cramped. She had successfully avoided thinking about the Duke's letter until the news of his imminent return set her heart racing. "His Grace will dine privately tonight," the butler informed the assembled staff. "Only essential servants will attend him. The rest of you will focus on preparations for the house party arriving on the morrow." Olivia exhaled in relief. As the lowest-ranked maid, she would certainly be kept far from His Grace's presence. She would remain invisible, as she had been for 7 years. That evening, as she carried a basket of linens through the dimly lit east corridor, a door suddenly opened, and she collided with a tall figure emerging from the library. The impact sent her basket flying, fine linen scattering across the polished floor. Mortified, Olivia dropped immediately to her knees, gathering the items while mumbling apologies. "No harm done," came a deep voice that froze her in place. "The fault was entirely mine." Slowly, she raised her eyes to find the Duke of Brentworth regarding her with undisguised interest. He was even more handsome than she remembered, tall and broad-shouldered, with intelligent eyes and a strong jaw currently darkened by evening stubble. "Your Grace," she managed, lowering her gaze and continuing to gather the linens. "Please forgive my clumsiness." Instead of continuing on his way, he crouched down and picked up a pillowcase, holding it out to her. The gesture was so unexpected, so contrary to the natural order of things, that Olivia stared at his hand in confusion. "You're her, aren't you?" he asked quietly. "The one who saved my life." Panic fluttered in her chest. "I merely assisted until the doctor arrived, Your Grace. It was nothing any servant wouldn't do. Dr. Morris tells a different story." His voice held a trace of amusement. "He says I owe my life to a maid with the medical knowledge of a physician." He described auburn hair and amber eyes. "I've been looking for you." Olivia clutched the basket to her chest, a shield against his scrutiny. "I'm sure His Grace has more important matters to attend to than seeking out servants." "Edward." "I beg your pardon." "My name is Edward. And I'd like to know yours, if you would do me the honor." The corridor seemed to shrink around them. This conversation violated every rule of propriety between master and servant. "Olivia," she whispered, unable to deny him this simple request. "Olivia Gardiner." "Daughter of Dr. Thomas Gardiner of Edinburgh," he said, confirming he knew exactly who she was. "Miss Gardiner, I've come to offer you a position more suited to your abilities. My mother requires a companion with medical knowledge." "Her health is delicate, and, Your Grace," Olivia interrupted, forgetting herself in her distress, "I am a maid. I have been for 7 years. Whatever I once was, that life is gone." His expression softened. "Is it? Or have you simply buried it beneath duty and survival?" The question struck too close to her carefully constructed defenses. Footsteps sounded at the far end of the corridor, and Olivia seized the opportunity. "I must return to my duties, Your Grace." "Congratulations on your recovery." She cursed hastily and fled, her heart thundering against her ribs. That night, sleep eluded her. The Duke's words echoed in her mind, disrupting the carefully maintained resignation that had sustained her through years of service. Worse was the memory of his eyes, not dismissive or predatory as she might have expected from an aristocrat addressing a servant, but direct and sincere. "Don't be a fool," she scolded herself. "His gratitude is momentary. To him, you're a curiosity, nothing more." The next morning, Olivia was summoned to Mrs. Winters's office once again. The housekeeper's thin lips were pressed into a bloodless line. "His Grace has requested you serve as temporary lady's maid to his mother, the Dowager Duchess, who arrives this afternoon," she announced icily. "I informed him you have no training for such a position, but he was most insistent." Olivia's stomach clenched. "Mrs. Winters, I have no wish to, your wishes are irrelevant," the housekeeper snapped. "You will do as His Grace commands, though heaven knows why he's taken such an interest in you. Report to Mrs. Fletcher immediately for instruction on your new duties." By afternoon, Olivia found herself dressed in a borrowed black dress of finer material than anything she had worn in years, waiting nervously in the Duchess's chamber. The room had been prepared with exquisite care, fresh flowers, a cheery fire, and delicate refreshments arranged on a silver tray. The Dowager Duchess of Brentworth arrived in a flurry of furs and perfume, a diminutive woman with shrewd eyes and an imperious manner. Olivia curtsied deeply, keeping her gaze lowered as she had been instructed. "So you're the girl who saved my son," the Duchess declared without preamble, examining Olivia like a curiosity in a cabinet. "Look at me, child." Olivia obeyed, meeting the older woman's penetrating stare. "Educated, obviously. Good posture. Pretty enough, in a natural way. The Duchess removed her gloves deliberately. "Edward has told me about your circumstances. Quite tragic. Your father was respected in medical circles, I understand." "Yes, Your Grace. And now you scrub floors." The Duchess clicked her tongue. "A criminal waste of intellect. Edward says you refused his offer of a position in London." Olivia swallowed hard. "I did not personally refuse, Your Grace. The housekeeper responded on my behalf." Understanding dawned in the Duchess's eyes. "I see. The old guard protecting their territory." She settled into a chair by the fire. "Tell me, Miss Gardiner, are you content with your life as it is?" The directness of the question caught Olivia off guard. For 7 years, contentment had been irrelevant. Survival had been her only concern. "I am grateful for my position," she answered carefully. "That wasn't what I asked," the Duchess replied. "My son nearly died 6 months ago. The experience changed him profoundly. He returned from death's door determined to live with purpose, to use his position and wealth for something meaningful." She fixed Olivia with a penetrating stare. "He believes finding you is part of that purpose." Olivia's pulse quickened. "I don't understand what His Grace could possibly want from me." The Duchess's lips curved into a small smile. "That, my dear, is what intrigues me. Edward has never shown interest in the welfare of specific servants before. Yet he travelled to Yorkshire in December specifically to find you." She leaned forward slightly. "My son is many things, but impulsive is not among them." Before Olivia could respond, a knock sounded at the door, and the Duke himself entered. He paused momentarily upon seeing Olivia, his eyes warming with approval at her transformed appearance. "Mother, I trust your journey was comfortable." He kissed the Duchess's cheek. "Tolerable, though these country roads do nothing for my constitution." She gestured toward Olivia. "I was just becoming acquainted with Miss Gardiner. An interesting young woman." "Indeed," Edward agreed, his gaze lingering on Olivia's flushed face. "I hope you'll both join me for dinner this evening." The Duchess raised an eyebrow. "You wish a lady's maid to dine with us? How unconventional, Edward." "Miss Gardiner is not a lady's maid," he replied firmly. "She is the daughter of a physician who has temporarily fallen on hard times. I wish to discuss a more suitable position with her, perhaps as your companion and medical attendant when we return to London." Olivia's head spun at this declaration. "Your Grace, I couldn't possibly." "You could," he interrupted gently. "And I believe you should. But we will discuss the matter properly over dinner, as equals rather than as master and servant." After they departed, Olivia sank onto a chair, her legs weak. The encounter had shattered her carefully constructed world. For 7 years, she had accepted her fall from respectability as permanent and irrevocable. Now, the Duke of Brentworth, a man who moved in the highest circles of society, was suggesting her circumstances could change. More disturbing was the way he looked at her, not with the casual appreciation men sometimes directed at female servants, but with genuine interest and respect. "This is madness," she thought. Even if his intentions are honorable, society would never accept a former maid elevated to companion to a duchess. Yet a tiny spark of hope had been kindled. Perhaps her father's medical knowledge, passed down through years of instruction, might still have purpose. Perhaps she needn't spend her remaining years scrubbing floors and emptying chamber pots. That evening, with trembling hands, Olivia dressed in a gown Mrs. Fletcher had procured, a simple blue silk that had belonged to a former lady's maid, altered hastily to fit her slender frame. Her hair, freed from its severe bun, was arranged in a simple style that emphasized its rich auburn color. The mirror reflected a stranger, not the invisible servant of recent years, but a glimpse of the young woman she might have been had tragedy not intervened. Dinner was an intimate affair in the small dining room rather than the grand formal one. The Duchess dominated the conversation initially, detailing her various ailments and treatments while assessing Olivia's knowledge with pointed questions. "You've had no formal medical training, of course," she noted, "but your understanding surpasses many physicians I've consulted." "Self-taught." "My father believed women should be educated in all subjects," Olivia explained. "He allowed me to study his medical texts and assist in his practice from an early age." Edward, who had been watching her intently, leaned forward. "Dr. Morris mentioned you recognized aconite poisoning immediately. He was most impressed." "My father had a particular interest in toxicology," Olivia replied, warming to the subject despite her nervousness. "He wrote a monograph on plant-derived poisons that was well received in Edinburgh medical circles." As the evening progressed, Olivia found herself speaking more freely than she had in years, drawn out by the Duchess's shrewd questions and Edward's evident interest. When the Duchess retired early, claiming fatigue from travel, Olivia moved to follow, aware that propriety demanded she not remain alone with the Duke. "Please, stay a moment longer," Edward requested. "We have matters to discuss." Hesitantly, Olivia resumed her seat, though she positioned herself at a proper distance. "You're afraid of me," he observed quietly. "Not afraid, Your Grace." "Cautious." "Because of my position?" "Because of mine," she clarified. "A woman in service has only her reputation. To be seen alone with a gentleman, particularly her employer." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "You think I intend to make you my mistress?" Olivia flushed crimson. "I make no presumptions about your Grace's intentions." "But you've heard rumors about aristocratic men and female servants," he pressed. "And you fear I saved you from the scullery only to place you in a more gilded form of servitude." His directness was shocking, yet also oddly reassuring. Men with dishonorable intentions rarely stated them so plainly. "Such arrangements are not uncommon," she said carefully. Edward's expression hardened. "Is that why you've avoided me? Why you allowed Mrs. Winters to decline my offer without consulting you?" "I didn't know she had responded until after the fact," Olivia admitted. "But yes, I would have declined regardless. I cannot afford scandal or impropriety, Your Grace. My position is precarious enough." He studied her for a long moment. "Miss Gardiner, I owe you my life. When I awakened after the poisoning, Dr. Morris told me exactly what transpired, how you recognized the poison, administered the antidote, and monitored me through the worst of it. He said I would certainly have died without your intervention. Any person with medical knowledge would have done the same. But it wasn't any person. It was you." His voice softened. "In those moments between consciousness and oblivion, I remember a voice, your voice, telling me I must fight, that I had purpose yet to fulfill." Olivia looked down at her hands. "I spoke without thinking." It was presumptuous. "It was true," he countered. "When I fully recovered, I found myself changed. The frivolous pursuits that once occupied me seemed hollow. I began reviewing my estates, improving conditions for tenants, establishing schools and infirmaries." "Noble endeavors," Olivia murmured, genuinely impressed. Yet something was missing. His gaze held hers. "I couldn't forget the woman who saved me, who had the knowledge to recognize poison, the courage to step forward despite her station, and the skill to administer treatment. When I discovered you had been sent back to scrubbing floors with barely a word of thanks, I was ashamed." "There's no shame in maintaining proper order," Olivia said softly. "I am a servant, Your Grace." "You are Dr. Gardiner's daughter," he corrected firmly. a woman of intelligence and skill who has fallen on hard times through no fault of her own. I'm offering you a chance to reclaim your rightful place, not as a maid, but as a companion to my mother with the opportunity to use your medical knowledge. The offer was tempting beyond measure, yet Olivia hesitated. And what would society say about such an arrangement? A scullery maid elevated to companion overnight. Society needn't know your recent history, Edward replied pragmatically. You are the daughter of a respected physician. That much is true and verifiable. The intervening years can remain private. Olivia shook her head. Secrets have a way of emerging, Your Grace. One servant from this household who encounters me in London would be sufficient to unravel such a deception. Then we shall face that possibility if it arises, he said simply. I am a duke, Miss Gardiner. Society may gossip, but they rarely challenge me directly. His confidence both impressed and worried her. Why would you take such a risk for a stranger? Edward's expression grew thoughtful. Perhaps because in saving my life, you reminded me what life should be for. Or perhaps because I recognize in you something rare, integrity and intelligence that deserve better than obscurity. He rose and moved to the fireplace, his tall frame silhouetted against the flames. Consider my offer, Miss Gardiner. Take whatever time you need. But know this, I have no dishonorable intentions toward you. You have my word as a gentleman. Olivia rose as well, recognizing the interview had concluded. Thank you for your generosity, Your Grace. I shall consider carefully. As she turned to leave, he spoke once more. One last thing, Miss Gardiner. The investigation into my poisoning was concluded last month. It was my former valet, acting on behalf of a business rival. Had you not intervened, he would have succeeded in his task. The revelation sent a chill through her. I'm grateful justice was served. As am I, he replied softly. More than you know. That night, Olivia paced her tiny attic room, weighing her options. The Duke's offer represented everything she had secretly longed for: respectable work, the chance to use her medical knowledge, escape from the drudgery of service. Yet dangers lurked beneath the surface. If her past as a scullery maid were discovered, she would be caught between worlds, no longer accepted below stairs, yet not truly welcomed above them. More troubling was her growing awareness of Edward Brentworth as a man rather than simply a duke. His intensity, his evident desire to use his privilege for good, his respect for her knowledge, all combined to create an attraction she dared not acknowledge. Even if his intentions are honorable now, she reasoned, proximity has a way of complicating matters. And when complications arise between a duke and a former maid, it is never the duke who suffers the consequences. By morning, she had made her decision. After attending to the Duchess, she requested a private moment with the Duke in his study, determined to decline his offer with gratitude and finality. She found him reviewing estate ledgers, his dark head bent in concentration. He looked up as she entered, his face brightening in a way that made her resolve waver. Miss Gardiner. Have you reached a decision? I have, Your Grace. She stood straight, hands clasped before her. While I am deeply grateful for your generous offer, I must respectfully decline. His expression fell. May I ask why? The position you describe, companion to Her Grace with medical responsibilities, requires social acceptance I cannot command. My background would inevitably be discovered, causing embarrassment to your family and difficulty for the Duchess. Edward set down his pen. You fear scandal more than you desire opportunity. The question stung with its accuracy. I fear being caught between worlds, Your Grace. Neither servant nor gentlewoman, with no clear place in society's rigid structure. Structure can be changed, he argued. particularly by those with the power to influence society's opinions. Some structures are too deeply entrenched, she countered. The divide between our stations is one such reality. Edward rose and approached her, stopping at a respectful distance. Miss Gardiner, may I speak plainly? Of course, Your Grace. My interest in securing your position as my mother's companion is not purely altruistic, he admitted. Over these past months, as I investigated your background and circumstances, I developed a profound admiration for your character. Your intelligence, your resilience in the face of tragedy, your medical skill, all speak to an exceptional woman. He paused, seeming to choose his next words carefully. I wish to know you better, Miss Gardiner. Not as master and servant, but as man and woman. The position with my mother would provide a respectable context for that acquaintance to develop. Olivia's heart pounded painfully in her chest. Your Grace, such an acquaintance could have only one of two outcomes, neither of them appropriate. Either you would tire of the novelty and move on, leaving me in an awkward position, or, he prompted when she faltered. Or feelings might develop that could never be properly acknowledged, she finished quietly. The son of a duke cannot marry a woman who has scrubbed floors, no matter her parentage. Edward's eyes darkened. You presume to know my mind on matters of marriage. I presume to know society's expectations of a man in your position, she corrected gently. You must marry for advantage, wealth, connections, or lineage. I possess none of these things. You possess what I value far more, he replied with surprising intensity. Courage, intelligence, and a fundamental goodness I have rarely encountered. When I lay dying, you didn't see a duke, you saw a man in need of help. That clarity of vision is precious to me. Olivia shook her head, though his words touched her deeply. Noble sentiments, Your Grace, but the reality remains unchanged. I cannot accept a position that would place us both in an impossible situation. Disappointment shadowed his features, but he nodded with reluctant acceptance. I understand your concerns, though I disagree with your conclusion. Will you at least remain at Brentworth Manor as my mother's attendant through the Christmas season? It would allow you time to reconsider. The request seemed reasonable, and Olivia found herself nodding. I will attend Her Grace until she departs, yes. Thank you. His smile returned, warming his features. Perhaps by Twelfth Night, you'll see things differently. Olivia doubted her perspective would change, but as she curtsied and withdrew, she couldn't deny the small flutter of hope that had taken residence in her heart. The Christmas house party transformed Brentworth Manor into a hive of activity. Aristocratic guests arrived daily, filling the grand rooms with laughter, music, and intrigue. Olivia remained largely invisible to the visitors, moving between the Duchess's chambers and the servants' quarters with practiced discretion. The Duchess, however, seemed determined to draw Olivia out of the shadows. She requested Olivia's presence during morning calls, introducing her as my physician's daughter who attends me with deliberate vagueness that allowed guests to assume a more genteel background than was true. More disconcerting were the occasions when Edward sought her out, requesting her opinion on books in the library, engaging her in conversation about medical developments, or simply asking after his mother's health. Each encounter reinforced her growing attraction to him, despite her efforts to maintain professional distance. One snowy afternoon, Olivia was arranging the Duchess's medicines when Lady Harrington, an elegant matron with a reputation for sharp observation, entered the chamber unannounced. "My dear Duchess, you must join us for charades," she declared. "The young people are quite desperate for your wit." Her gaze fell on Olivia, narrowing slightly. "And who might this be?" The Duchess waved a dismissive hand. "Miss Gardiner, my medical companion. Edinburgh physician's daughter. Quite knowledgeable about my various conditions." Lady Harrington studied Olivia with uncomfortable intensity. Gardiner of Edinburgh? The name is familiar. Her eyes widened suddenly. Not Thomas Gardiner? The one who, the very same, the Duchess interrupted smoothly. His daughter has been most helpful to me. Such a comfort to have someone with medical understanding when one's health is delicate. Olivia kept her expression neutral, though her stomach clenched with dread. Her father's disgrace had been widely discussed in certain circles, his desperate financial speculations to fund his research, the debts that had mounted until they crushed him. How unusual, Lady Harrington murmured, her implication clear. I wasn't aware his family had maintained any connections after the unfortunate business. Talent and knowledge outlast scandal, Lady Harrington, came a deep voice from the doorway. Edward stood there, his expression pleasant but his eyes cold as they regarded the visitor. Miss Gardiner's medical expertise has proven invaluable to my mother. Indeed, she once saved my life with her quick thinking. Lady Harrington's eyebrows rose dramatically. Saved your life? My dear Duke, you must tell me this story immediately. Another time, perhaps, he demurred. I've come to escort my mother to the drawing room. The musicians have arrived from York. As the Duchess and Lady Harrington departed, Edward lingered, his gaze meeting Olivia's with concern. I apologize for Lady Harrington's rudeness. She delights in uncovering what she perceives as secrets. There was no rudeness, Your Grace. Merely the truth. Olivia arranged the medicine bottles with methodical precision. My father's disgrace is a matter of public record. I've never denied it. Nor should you, he agreed. Dr. Gardiner made a mistake born of desperation to fund important research. That doesn't diminish his contributions to medicine or reflect on your character. His defense of her father touched Olivia deeply. Most of society had been quick to condemn Thomas Gardiner's financial improprieties, forgetting his decades of service to the poor and his valuable research into childhood diseases. Thank you for your understanding, she said softly. Few have shown such compassion regarding my father's memory. Edward moved closer, his voice lowering. Miss Gardiner, Olivia, I fear Lady Harrington's interest has been piqued. She will likely investigate your background more thoroughly. And discover I've been in service, Olivia concluded, resignation settling over her? I expected as much eventually. I shall speak with Her Grace about finding a replacement. That's not what I meant, Edward protested. I merely wish to prepare you for possible gossip, not suggest you should leave. Olivia shook her head. You don't understand, Your Grace. Once Lady Harrington discovers I was a scullery maid until a fortnight ago, she will make the situation untenable. Better I depart voluntarily than be forced out by scandal. Frustration flickered across Edward's features. This is precisely the rigid thinking I hoped you would reconsider. You allow fear of society's judgment to dictate your choices. With good reason, she countered. I have no protections against such judgment. No wealth, no family connections, no title to shield me. You have me, he said simply. The words hung between them, laden with implications neither could fully acknowledge. Olivia felt a treacherous warmth spread through her chest, quickly followed by practical caution. Your Grace is kind, but even a duke's goodwill cannot change certain realities. Edward stepped closer, close enough that she could detect the subtle scent of sandalwood that clung to his clothing. What if I told you I don't give a damn about those realities? That I care far more for substance than appearance, for character rather than position. Olivia's breath caught. I would say Your Grace is unusually enlightened, but still bound by the world in which you live. The world can change, he insisted. Not quickly enough, she replied softly. They stood in silence, the air between them charged with unspoken possibilities. Finally, Edward sighed. "You are the most stubborn woman I've ever encountered," he said, though his tone held more admiration than censure. "Will you at least promise not to disappear without proper farewell? I deserve that much for saving you from Mrs. Winters's tyranny." Despite her anxiety, Olivia found herself smiling. "I promise, Your Grace." "Edward," he corrected. "When we're alone, at least, I'd prefer you use my name." The request crossed yet another boundary of propriety, yet Olivia couldn't find it in herself to refuse. "Edward," she conceded, the name feeling both foreign and strangely right on her lips. His answering smile was brilliant. "Progress at last," he murmured before bowing and taking his leave. That evening, unable to sleep, Olivia slipped down to the library, hoping to find a medical text to distract her troubled thoughts. She was surprised to discover the Duchess already there, elegantly dressed despite the late hour. "Your Grace," Olivia curtsied, preparing to withdraw. "I apologize for the intrusion." "Nonsense, child. Come sit with me." The Duchess patted the seat beside her on the sofa. "I've been hoping for a moment alone with you." Warily, Olivia complied, noting the cunning intelligence in the older woman's eyes. "Lady Harrington has been quite busy this evening," the Duchess began without preamble, whispering in corners, sending her maid to question the servants. "I believe she's constructing quite a dramatic narrative about your background." Olivia's shoulders tensed. "I expected as much, Your Grace. I shall pack my things tonight and be gone by morning." "You'll do nothing of the sort," the Duchess declared firmly. "Running only confirms guilt, and you have nothing to be guilty about. Reduced circumstances are not a moral failing." "In the eyes of society, they might as well be," Olivia replied. "Particularly for a woman." The Duchess studied her with shrewd assessment. "You care for my son." It wasn't a question, and Olivia didn't insult the woman's intelligence by denying it. "It matters little what I feel, Your Grace. The realities of our positions remain unchanged." "Realities?" the Duchess scoffed. "Let me tell you about realities, Miss Gardiner. When I married the 6th Duke of Brentworth, I was considered an inappropriate choice. My father was merely a baronet, my dowry modest. Society whispered that I had trapped the Duke somehow, that I was beneath the family's dignity." Olivia listened with surprise. The Duchess had always seemed the epitome of aristocratic breeding. "Within 5 years, those same critics were seeking invitations to my entertainments," the Duchess continued. "By the time Edward was born, my suitability was no longer questioned. Do you know why?" "Your husband's title protected you," Olivia suggested. "My own determination protected me," the Duchess corrected sharply. "I refused to be cowed by whispers. I carried myself with the absolute certainty that I belonged precisely where I was. Eventually, society adjusted its expectations to match my reality." She leaned closer, her voice intense. "My son has changed since his brush with death. The frivolous young man who left for the continent returned as someone more thoughtful, more purposeful. And since meeting you, he has changed further still. I have not seen him so animated, so engaged, in years." Olivia shook her head. "Your Grace, whatever Edward, his Grace, feels for me is merely gratitude mixed with novelty. A temporary fascination with the unusual circumstances of our meeting." "Is that what you believe?" the Duchess asked, her tone suggesting she knew otherwise. "Then you understand my son far less than I thought." Before Olivia could respond, the library door opened, and Lady Harrington entered, followed by several other guests. Her triumphant expression confirmed Olivia's worst fears. "My dear Duchess," Lady Harrington proclaimed loudly, I've made the most extraordinary discovery about your companion. Would you believe that until a mere fortnight ago, she was a scullery maid in this very house, scrubbing floors and emptying chamber pots? The assembled guests gasped appropriately, their eyes fixed on Olivia with scandalized fascination. The Duchess didn't flinch. "How persistent you are, Lady Harrington." Yes, Miss Gardiner temporarily accepted a position in service after her father's death left her without resources. Many gentlewomen have faced similar circumstances. I fail to see the relevance. But to elevate a scullery maid to companion, Lady Harrington insisted. It's most irregular. One wonders at the Duke's particular interest in such an arrangement. The insinuation hung in the air, ugly and explicit. Olivia rose, her face burning with humiliation. "If you'll excuse me, Your Grace," she murmured to the Duchess. "You will remain precisely where you are," the Duchess commanded, her voice steel beneath silk. Then, to Lady Harrington, "You forget yourself, Beatrice. Miss Gardiner is my companion by my choice, and her previous position is of no consequence. Unless you wish to suggest I am incapable of selecting my own staff." Lady Harrington faltered momentarily. "Of course not, Your Grace. I merely thought you should be aware." "I am aware of everything concerning my household," the Duchess interrupted coldly, "including which guests have overstayed their welcome." The threat was unmistakable. Lady Harrington paled, then quickly composed herself. "I meant no offense, naturally. Merely looking out for your interests." "My interests are best served by loyalty and discretion," the Duchess replied pointedly. "Qualities I value above pedigree." The tense standoff was interrupted by Edward's arrival. He surveyed the scene with a quick, assessing glance, noting Olivia's distress and his mother's rigid posture. "Is everything all right, Mother?" he inquired mildly, though his eyes were sharp. "Perfectly fine, Edward," the Duchess replied. Lady Harrington was just sharing her discovery that Miss Gardiner previously worked as a maid in our household. As if that were somehow remarkable. Edward's gaze hardened as it fell on Lady Harrington. "Indeed? How diligent of you to investigate my staff, Lady Harrington. I wasn't aware you had such an interest in domestic arrangements." Lady Harrington sensed the dangerous undercurrent in his tone. "Merely idle curiosity, Your Grace. No harm intended." "Curiosity about others' misfortunes rarely comes without harm," he observed coldly. "Miss Gardiner's circumstances resulted from her father's untimely death, leaving her without protection or provision. That she survived through honest work speaks to her character, not her deficiency." His public defense, while well-intentioned, only increased Olivia's mortification. She felt exposed, her private struggles laid bare before mocking aristocratic eyes. Without waiting for permission, she slipped from the room, desperate for escape. She fled to the garden, heedless of the winter chill. Snow crunched beneath her thin slippers as she sought refuge among the dormant rose bushes, her breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "This is why I should have left immediately," she thought bitterly. "Now I've become a spectacle, an entertainment for bored aristocrats. Olivia." She turned to find Edward approaching, his expression concerned. He carried a heavy cloak, which he draped around her shoulders without asking permission. "You shouldn't be out here without proper covering," he chided gently. "It's below freezing." "I needed air," she replied stiffly, though she clutched the warm cloak gratefully around herself. "I've asked Lady Harrington to depart first thing tomorrow," he told her. Her behavior was unacceptable. Olivia gave a hollow laugh. Her behavior was entirely predictable. "I warned you this would happen." "You did," he acknowledged. "But running away isn't the answer." "What would you have me do?" she demanded, her composure finally cracking. Stand there while they whisper and stare? Pretend I don't see the judgment in their eyes? I know my place in the world, Edward. Tonight merely reminded me of it. Your place, he repeated, frustration evident in his voice. You speak as though your worth as a human being is determined by the circumstances of your birth or the work you've done to survive. In this world, it is, she insisted. We may wish otherwise, but reality remains unchanged by our wishes. Edward moved closer, his tall frame blocking the bitter wind. Then perhaps it's time to change reality. He took her cold hands in his warm ones. Olivia, I have respected your boundaries. I've tried to be patient, to give you time to see beyond the limitations you've accepted. But I can no longer remain silent about my feelings. Alarmed, Olivia tried to withdraw her hands, but he held them firmly. Edward, please don't, I love you, he said simply. Not from gratitude or novelty or fascination with the unusual. I love your mind, your courage, your unwavering moral center. I love how you see the world clearly yet remain uncorrupted by its cruelties. The word she had both longed for and dreaded washed over her. You can't, she whispered, tears forming despite her resolve. You're a duke. I'm nothing. You're everything, he corrected fiercely. The woman who saved my life. The woman who made me want to be worthy of that life. If society cannot accept that, then society must change, not us. Olivia shook her head, tears now falling freely. You speak as though love conquers all obstacles. It doesn't. Love doesn't pay bills or silence gossip or protect reputations. No, he agreed, but wealth and position can do those things quite effectively. I have both in abundance. And you would use them to shield me, she asked. For how long, Edward? Until the novelty fades? Until you realize that elevating a former maid has cost you respect among your peers. Edward's expression hardened. You think so little of me? That I would abandon you when the path becomes difficult. I think you don't fully understand what you're proposing, she replied honestly. The Duchess survived society's censure because she was merely of lower rank, not a former servant. The gulf between us is far wider. Then we shall bridge it, he insisted. Beginning now. Before she could question his meaning, Edward dropped to one knee in the snow before her, still holding her hands in his. Olivia's heart nearly stopped. Edward, what are you doing? What I should have done the moment I realized I couldn't imagine my life without you in it, he answered, his voice steady despite the cold and the gravity of the moment. Olivia Gardiner, will you do me the great honor of becoming my wife? The world seemed to tilt beneath her feet. You can't be serious. I have never been more serious about anything in my life, he assured her, his eyes never leaving hers. I love you. I want to build a life with you, one where your intelligence and compassion can flourish, where your medical knowledge can benefit others, where you need never again feel ashamed of circumstances beyond your control. Olivia struggled to breathe, overwhelmed by the sincerity in his gaze. Your family, your position. My mother adores you, he interrupted. As for my position, being a duke means I answer to very few people. It's one of the few advantages of the title that I genuinely appreciate. And society? The ton will never accept me. Some will, some won't, he conceded. Those who matter will follow my mother's lead. Those who don't matter can gossip all they like from a distance. Snow fell gently around them, dusting Edward's dark hair with crystalline flakes as he remained kneeling before her. The absurdity and beauty of the moment, a duke proposing to a maid in a winter garden, struck Olivia with sudden clarity. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps the boundaries she had accepted as immutable were more permeable than she had believed. Perhaps courage wasn't just about survival, but about daring to reach for happiness despite the risks. "You once told me I had saved your life," she said softly. "What you don't understand is that you saved mine as well. Not just by offering me a position above stairs, but by seeing me, truly seeing me, when I had become invisible to the world and even to myself." Hope dawned in Edward's eyes. "Is that a yes?" Olivia took a deep breath, feeling as though she stood on the edge of a precipice. To step back meant safety, familiarity, the continuation of a half-life. To step forward meant risk, exposure, but also the possibility of joy she had long since abandoned. "Yes," she whispered, choosing the unknown future over the certain past. "Yes, I will marry you, Edward Brentworth, though heaven knows I must be mad to agree." His face transformed with joy as he rose and pulled her into his arms. "Not mad," he murmured, his lips close to hers. "Merely brave enough to believe in possibilities rather than limitations." When he kissed her, Olivia felt the last of her carefully constructed walls crumble. For 7 years, she had survived by becoming invisible, by accepting her diminished place in the world. Now, in Edward's embrace, she allowed herself to be fully seen, fully known, no longer the forgotten maid, but a woman worthy of love and respect. Snow continued to fall around them, blanketing the garden in pristine white, a clean slate upon which they would write their future together. Spring 1846. The Duke and Duchess of Brentworth stood beneath blossoming apple trees in the garden of their London residence, watching as patients arrived at the newly established Gardiner Clinic for women and children. The modest building adjacent to their property had been Olivia's wedding gift from Edward, a place where she could continue her father's work, providing medical care to those who could not afford physicians' fees. "Another full day of appointments," Edward observed, his arm around his wife's waist. "Your father would be proud." Olivia leaned against him, contentment warming her despite the morning chill. "I think he would. Though he might be shocked to see his daughter practicing medicine under such respectable auspices." "Respectability is overrated," Edward replied with a smile. "I much prefer effectiveness. And according to Dr. Morris, your treatment protocols for childhood fever have proven remarkably effective." The first months of their marriage had not been without challenges. Society had indeed been scandalized by the Duke of Brentworth's choice of bride, a physician's daughter who had worked as a maid. Some doors had closed to them permanently. Yet the Duchess had been true to her word, wielding her considerable influence to ensure that the most important salons and homes remained open. Those who initially whispered behind fans had gradually fallen silent as Olivia proved herself knowledgeable, gracious, and utterly devoted to improving conditions for women and children in London's poorest districts. "Lady Harrington sent another request for an invitation to our midsummer ball," Olivia mentioned, amusement coloring her tone. Edward laughed. "Persistent woman. What shall we do with her this time?" "I think we might accept," Olivia replied thoughtfully. "She's been quite vocal in supporting the clinic since her granddaughter recovered under our care. People can change, it seems." "Some can," Edward agreed, turning to face her fully. "Others merely reveal their true selves when given the opportunity." He brushed a tender kiss across her forehead. "You were always extraordinary, Olivia. I merely had the good fortune to recognize it before someone else did." Olivia smiled, thinking of the long journey from scullery maid to duchess, from invisible to seen. The transformation had not been in her circumstances alone, but in her understanding of her own worth, her willingness to claim the life she deserved rather than the one fate had assigned her. "We should go in," she said, noting the time. "I have patients waiting, and you have that meeting with Parliament regarding the Factory Act amendments." Edward nodded, but held her a moment longer. "Have I told you today that I love you?" "Only twice," she replied with mock severity. "Most neglectful." "I love you, Duchess," he said solemnly, his eyes reflecting the depth of his feeling. "For saving my life, for sharing it, and for making it immeasurably richer than I ever imagined possible." As they walked arm in arm toward their respective duties, Olivia reflected on the strange twist of fate that had brought them together: a poisoned cup of tea, a maid with medical knowledge, and a duke who saw beyond society's rigid boundaries to the woman beneath the cap and apron. The forgotten maid had indeed saved the duke's life in secret, unaware he would return to claim her hand. But in claiming hers, he had also offered his own, creating a partnership that transcended the limitations of their world, proving that sometimes, love could indeed rewrite the rules that govern society's narrow definitions of worth and belonging.